I've been a lot of situations, man, where I've got to disappoint myself or others one way or the other, right? And I think that's true in fatherhood as well.
How do you get past the disappointment of your kid if you miss an event, if you miss something that's important to them? Because I think there's a lot of fathers out there, a lot of mothers out there that they struggle with this.
The biggest thing is, man, you got to have the support from your spouse because, my wife is always telling the kids if I am not able to do something, it's that reminder of why we're doing it, right? And what responsibility daddy has. In my 20s, I'd watch guys be out at the bar and their families are at home, their kids are at home. We're not doing that. What are your intentions? Where does your heart sit? And how do you communicate that, right? And if you do that and you and your wife or your spouse are on the same page, a lot of people out there are separated from their spouse. So if you're communicating that to your child, they're going to understand eventually, man. They're going to understand what that responsibility is. And it comes down to your intentions will lead you to the right place.
It's just having those conversations, like you said, even with your kids too. You're resolving that disappointment because they know where dad is. They know why dad's doing what he does. They know why you're spending all these hours doing the things. You're not just out at the bars, like you said, like a lot of guys are, just going to get in a beer with the boys after work. No, you're grinding. You're putting in the work because you're building something.
You're having these communications, whether it's, you talking to Liz, me talking to Lori, or us talking to our kids. Dude, you're expressing that disappointment that you feel. It's like, man, I don't want to miss anything. And my kids know that, right? It's like, I want to be there. I don't want to miss a single goal that Quincy scores in soccer. I don't want to miss a single moment that, Kingston has playing deck hockey. I don't want to miss a single moment of anything. I've missed my kids' first steps being on the road. I've missed the first time they said, mama or dada. I missed all of that. But I tell you what I didn't miss, man, is being a good example of showing them what it takes, to be great in the world.
Welcome to The Real Build. I'm your host, Bill Ryman, your broker builder. And today I got a special guest, a returning guest on the relaunch of this show. Pumped to have him. This guy's like a brother to me, a great friend of mine, mentor. He's a father, husband, coach, obviously a leader of a big company. We're going to get into that a little bit today. He walks the walk. I always talk about that. He doesn't just talk the talk. The guy, this man does pretty much everything he says he's going to do. And you guys probably see him all over the internet, all over social media. He's a true visionary, he's just had a huge impact on my life personally. And I'm very excited to talk some business with you, talk some life with you. And actually, you appeared on my show. Last time you appeared on my show was on August 11th of 2021. So a lot has changed.
Wow.
Since that time. So Brian Hess, welcome to The Real Build, brother.
Thanks, brother. I appreciate the intro, man. And the feeling is mutual, dude. I could say the same thing about you. Everything that you mentioned there, I could say the same thing back to you, man. So just grateful to be here, grateful for your friendship, and hard to believe that the last time I was on this show is 2021, dude. It feels like that was last year or last month,
Yeah. That show, man, starting with that, that's where you and I first connected, was that show. And I remember inviting you on. I had, quite a few coaches, let's say construction coaches that, you were just different. You and I in that podcast related in so many ways. And then we even started talking after it. You turned me on to Warriors for Christ, that are the Bible group we were both part of, and ever since, though, our relationship, um, has kept going and going and going, and our friendship, and like I said, you're like a brother to me too, man. And it's just crazy how God puts you in certain places and it takes you to another place, right?
Yeah, it's amazing how God always has a plan to put the right people in your life, and our responsibility as individuals, man, is to water those relationships that God puts in front of us. And it's been awesome, dude, to just when I think back, 2021, man, like Preston was just a baby, and our both of your little boy and my little girl weren't even here yet, right? And so those relationships that God puts in our life, like they're for a reason, man. And to be able to connect with people that we go through a lot of the similar things, right? Like growing businesses and dealing with the challenges, and especially in construction, there's so many unique challenges to what we go through. Our wives have become good friends. When you get to go through like becoming, watching you become a father, man, is one of the greatest gifts you could ever get as a friend. To watch somebody go through that, and then to be able to, be there on the other side of that for whatever challenges. When you have a kid, there's going to be a moment where you feel like, what in the hell am I doing? Like, I don't even know how to do all this, and to be able to go through that stuff together, it's such a gift, man. And you're right, dude. Those relationships that God puts in your life, man, He has such a plan for us. And when we listen close enough to understand that plan and embrace it, and we do a good job watering those relationships, you end up with this, man, like having another brother, a good friend, somebody you can really do life with. And that is, it's so hard to find, man. It's so hard to find, and it's so rare. And that I'm grateful for it, man. I can't tell you how grateful I am for all the conversations. Like when you said 2021, I'm like, damn, dude, I'm trying to calculate how many conversations happen in a 3+ year period of you know uh knowing each other, and having whether it's business conversations or personal or family or whatever it is. Like, what a gift, to be able to have. And dude, it's like, I think the best friendships are the ones that it seems like it was just yesterday, right? It's like you can't even put a time value on it, because it almost bends time to some degree.
Obviously, I wanna bring up one thing you mentioned was obviously fatherhood, and I've reached out to you a couple times with some questions on this whole subject because obviously it's very new to me. Dealing with, I'm a lot like yourself. I like to work. I like to keep myself busy. And having a wife that's staying home too, and she's very driven as well, and we've had our times where we butted heads a little bit on certain instances, but I've it's you've helped me in quite a few ways with that topic. Obviously, with the experience you have too, you've been through a lot as a father. You've your fifth kid now, and I don't know if you're going anymore after that. You might as well just get the football team going. But
Oh, I'm too old for that, brother.
but talk about the meaning of fatherhood to you and how much your kids represent what you do, how much what you do, the impact of what you do for your kids, for the fathers out there too, because I've talked about, there's really no balance. There's really no work-life balance. It's very hard to find. People are like, how do I get a perfect work-life balance? There really isn't any. Like, and us as being entrepreneurs, us with that mindset of we like to just keep going, keep going. I mean, I just started coaching high school football voluntarily. Like, There's another thing I added to my plate. People are like, why would you do that? You're already busy already. Because I want to give back. It just feels good to be out there, you know? And talk about that a little bit on your end.
Yeah, I mean, dude, fatherhood is it's honestly hard to put into words. I think, anybody that's experienced it would probably say something similar. Like, there's such a responsibility in it that it's almost like when you really think about it, it's almost too much to bear, right? It's like, these little lives and little people and how they look up to you and how they mimic the things that you do. And, I'm 11 years, almost 12 years into that game. And, having five children, our kids are almost 12, 9, 6, 4, and then Stella just turned 5 months here. And, so you gain a lot of experience. I kind of feel like it's like doctors, right? They say, they're practicing physicians, like they don't ever figure it out. They're always, looking for something new. And fatherhood is the same, man. And, the idea of, work life balance or, kind of the guilt that we're given, for the time that we sacrifice, with our families to be able to, build what we build. I struggle with that all the time, man. And I always use this analogy. It's like, you look at a lawyer's business card, it's that weight, that scale that's on there, right? The balance of both sides. And I think that, you never really achieve equal balance. It's always one way or the other. And I think that's life. It's like sometimes your wife is going to need you, like actually need you, and you're going to have to be there and you're going to have to give up, something that you got to do at work for that. Sometimes it's going to be important for you to be there for your kids. And there's going to be times where you can't be. There's going to be times where duty calls and you got to go, across the country. Next week, man, I've got something important here at home, that's not related to my family, but it's still really important to me. And I've got, a team of 4 people that, I'm going to California and then over to Vegas. And like, I struggle with that decision, just like I struggle with any decision. And I don't think, I'm in a lot of situations, man, where I've got to disappoint myself or others one way or the other, right? And I think that's true in fatherhood as well. The responsibility of being a father, let's talk about that for a minute. I had my kids, I had Kingston in here on Tuesday and Paisley in here yesterday in the office, and they love being here, man. And that is one of the greatest gifts I think you could have as a parent is to have your kids interested in what it is that you're doing. I was just telling somebody this last night, like when we did the partnerships with the Penguins and the Steelers, the first time that the kids saw our company logo on the TV on the Pens game, like they went crazy, dude. Like I wish I had a video of it in my living room of like just how excited they are because and I try to put myself in their shoes, right? Just imagine, being your son and, when he figures out what's going on in the world, he gets a little older and he's going to look at these homes that you build for people and you're walking them through there. Like I'm getting chills, man, just like talking about this. You're walking them through there and like, you could probably go back to that with your own father, right? Like thinking about that as a child, seeing that and starting to realize like what your dad does,
Mhm.
and the difference your dad makes. And so for me, that's it, brother. I'm always focused on the difference that I can make with people. And I think when we do that well in business, it reflects in our ability to be a great father. It reflects in our ability to be a great husband because when you care about people and that's your principle and you value people and you pour into people and we can both relate to the fact of like going home with an empty tank because you left it all on the field that day, right? And walking into the house, and I know you've posted about it recently, but every morning, man, Stella is, either next to our bed or in our bed, right? And when she wakes up, bro, that little girl, man, has instant, like just the biggest smile, and she'll look over at me and get that smile. And when you walk into your house when they get older, it's like every day's a party, when daddy gets home. And dude, there's nothing like it. And if you need extra motivation after that, man, something is different about you than what's in me. Because, no matter how tired I am, when they come running at the door, when they hear it open, and it's a big celebration for my arrival at the house, like it's just a daily reminder, dude, of like what that responsibility is, what we're really here to do. And for me, the most important part of fatherhood to me is showing them what's possible and being a good example. It's being a good example of what a husband looks like, so that my daughters know what they're looking for, when they get older. It's being a good example of what a good man looks like, so that my boys know how to mimic that when they get older. And, and being that for the other kids, for your son, when he starts showing up to TCS events, like making sure we don't have knuckleheads around, or, a bunch of arrogant fools that run around acting, a certain way. Like that's not what I want for our kids, my kids and yours, right? And so, it's like how we live really matters, man. And to me, fatherhood is that filter. It's like it's a reminder not to be that knucklehead, because we all have the moments of maybe wanting to be at times, right? And or feeling like we should be or could be. And so, I think it's so important, and it's such a grounding reminder to me in my life of like, building this business was an example to my kids of like, you could do anything you want, man. Like I didn't start this stuff until I was 38 years old. And so, they don't have many excuses that they could use if they have a dream inside of them that they want to go chase, because their dad erased all those dreams all of those excuses for their dreams, right? It's like, well, I can't do this because of that. Well, dude, I was 38 years old. My wife stayed at home, still does to this day. And I took the jump, right? I risked it all to be able to do this. And it looks easy now to say like, yeah, that was a good idea. But at the moment, most people thought I was crazy. And I did it, a lot because I didn't want to die with that dream inside of me. But the other part was I just kept saying to myself, like, I don't want my kids to be put in a box, right? Of thinking that this is the only way you could do it. That, you got to grow up, get a job, save your money. And that's fine for a lot of people. And I encourage people to have great careers. We have a lot of those people that work here. But if that's not you and you have a dream inside of you, like, man, be that example for your kids. Show them what's possible, be willing to take the risk, and they'll see that and they'll be willing to mimic that. Both of my kids that are old enough to kind of have those thoughts have business ideas that they throw out all the time of what they want to be. And I don't think that's an accident, right? I think it's what they see, not just what they see in me, but my kids are at every TCS retreat. They see that in you. They see that in Keith. They see that in Daniel Good and everybody else that's a member of TCS. They see these people that they love and respect, that they can mimic themselves after, right? And so, to me, man, it's the greatest responsibility that's ever been placed on me. There was a point in my life, man, where I was 30 something years old before I had kids. And there was a point where I was like, maybe I'm not going to, like I was divorced. I was 30 something years old. I hadn't had kids. Most of my friends had. And I thought to myself, like, maybe it's never going to happen for me, man. And it was a lifelong dream of mine to have a family. I didn't know I'd have 5 kids, right? But when that moment happened, where I was like, I don't know if this will happen for me or not. Um, to today, I can't wake up every day, man, and think about what God's blessed me with and not be overwhelmed with emotion and gratitude. It's like dude, what would my life be like? Sometimes we send the kids to my parents' house for the weekend and like just a couple of them, and we got like one or two left in the house. It's like it seems like nobody's there, right? Like, it's just what a gift, man. What a responsibility. And I'm just so grateful, dude, that God blessed me with that responsibility.
I want to dissect some of the stuff you said there. Such a great topic here too. I mean, and one of the best things you're 100%, million percent right is just seeing that smile. I mean, that smile is the driver. It's like it's one of the most amazing feelings out there for you that don't have kids that are out there, or you or that are about to have kids. Once you have that, that's the fire right there. One thing you did say is you disappoint yourself sometimes, and uh, you dealing with that. We're gonna get into how you deal with that disappointment, if like the Vegas trip you were talking about earlier, and then also how do you get past the disappointment of your kid if you miss an event, if you miss something that's important to them? Because I think there's a lot of fathers out there, a lot of mothers out there that they struggle with this, and this may be a tough question, and I just want to hear your answer on it. How do you get past that disappointment, not only in yourself, but in your child?
I think, man, you have to get to a point in your life, and this is applicable for a lot of things, not just this topic, where like you gotta really play the game of life by your intentions and not always the results, right?
Mm,
Because there's so many things in my life now where I wish I could, right, but I can't. There's things that getting put in front of me where I have to make choices, and that you know, I, I'd rather disappoint myself than disappoint somebody else all the time. Like I'd rather bear the burden myself than to put that on my kids or my wife. But I think the biggest thing is, man, you got to have the support from your spouse because my wife is always telling the kids if I am not able to do something, it's that reminder of why we're doing it, right? And what responsibility daddy has. It's not like, and this is really the differentiator, man, is, I remember, people that I grew up around or, in my 20s, I'd watch like, guys be out at the bar and their families are at home, their kids are at home. We're not doing that, right? Like we've got, responsibilities and business things that we got to go take care of. There's a balance to all of it, man. But I think it comes down to your intentions. Like, what are your intentions? Like the thing next week, man, transparently is, our landlord here at the office, who became a dear friend to me, just passed away unexpectedly a couple days ago. And his funeral is next week. And it's like, what do I do? And I still don't have that figured out. Like, how do I make it happen? Because I've got appointments on the West Coast, and the funeral's only like it's one day and the next morning, and it's tough to get from the West Coast back and forth. Like, it's just not a lot of good flights that get me here. And you struggle with that stuff. It's like, man, Frank was an unbelievable guy to me. Like I had lunch with him once a month. He became a real friend, like somebody I'll genuinely miss. And you know, how do you decide? You can't. And like, dude, the worst part is like you're going to beat yourself up over those decisions, but you're also going to be judged by people.
yeah.
And you got to be willing to be judged because this life is messy, man. It's not easy to do it all. It's like, well, what am I going to do? Like, how do I, rearrange what I have to rearrange? Like, I'm either going to disappoint a bunch of people there, or I'm going to disappoint myself and others here. Like either way, you're losing.
Mm.
And I think it comes down to like you got to really think through that stuff and make the best decision. And then again, be willing to shoulder the responsibility of that decision and just own it and know that the truth is, Ben, next week, like my heart's in two places. That happens in fatherhood. It happens in life scenarios. It happens everywhere. But for me, the way that I deal with it is by knowing that, like, dude, my heart has the purest of intentions, and I would like to be able to do it all. I'd like to be able to be in two places at once, but I can't. And so I've got to figure out like what is reasonable for me to do. Is it, you know, that I miss a practice for Quincy every once in a while with soccer because I have a responsibility somewhere else? And then what does he think about that? And I have conversations with my kids about it. It's like, this is what we're doing. This is why we're doing it. This is where daddy is. So they don't think like, I'm off doing whatever. Like they're very clear about what it is that we're doing and why we do it. The funniest story is there was a morning recently where I was joking with Quincy, and I told him like I'm not going to work today. I'm not gonna go to work today. I'm gonna skip work. And he goes, "You got to go to work, Dad." And I was like, "Why?" He's like, "Well, somebody has to pay for this house we live in, and somebody has." And I was like, "Dude, that's pretty cool, right?" Like that we've had enough conversations. He's 6, but he understands like things cost money. He wants to go vacation in Florida. Like it costs money. You got to sacrifice to get that. But I think it comes back, man, that word, if I could leave the audience with anything, it's like, what are your intentions? Where does your heart sit? And how do you communicate that? Right. And if you do that and you and your wife or your spouse are on the same page, a lot of people out there are separated from their spouse. So like if you're communicating that to your child, they're going to understand eventually, man. They're going to understand what that responsibility is. And like, it comes down to your intentions will lead you to the right place. And, you can't put too much stock in other people's opinions, right? Like, because you're going to be judged. If you're a busy person, you're going to be judged for how fast or not fast you respond to people's text messages. You're going to be judged for the phone calls that you can't take from time to time because your schedule's busy. You're going to be judged for all of it. It's your intentions that allow you to function with the weight of all that riding on you.
Going into intentions, like you just said too, and the first thing that everything you said was spot on because the first thing, the word intention, right? A lot of people, I think they struggle with it because they're intentional in their business, but they're not intentional with their families. And one thing that you did differently, or, that everybody should do, every working man, every working woman, you know, whoever, is have those conversations, communicate better. Um, you said you have the conversations with your kids. I think a lot of people struggle with that. I think a lot of people don't do that because they don't think to do that. They don't have the conversations with their wives either. And that's one thing I've been really trying to work on is having better conversations with my wife because this is a new role to her. Her new role now is a mother. It wasn't before. She was working with us. She was really, really good at her job. She loved what she did. She had a lot of fulfillment through it. But now her whole world has changed. So my reactions to the how she reacts to what I'm doing, I get to still go to work. I still get to, you know, do my thing, but I still come home and help her drop what I'm doing and help her as much as possible. But I still get to go to work. She doesn't really get to do that anymore. She's working a couple days a week now, but it's at first I didn't know how to have those conversations. And the better I've become at communicating and listening to her, uh, the conversations have gotten a lot better, and she's gotten a lot more understanding on my role as the husband, the person that's providing right now. Um, for you, those listening, it's not always the husband, it could be the wife, and I could have been Mr. Mom too. But it's just having those conversations, like you said, even with your kids too. I mean, you're that right there, that answer on my question about disappointment, you're basically you're resolving that disappointment because they know where dad is. They know why dad's doing what he does. They know why you're spending all these hours doing the things. You're not just out at the bars like you said, like a lot of guys are, just going to get in a beer with the boys after work. No, you're grinding, you're putting in the work because you're building something for them too. So that was huge right there.
Yeah, and let's talk about the female side of this for a minute, man, because I'm just sitting here thinking, listening to you talk about Liz, and like, imagine the dichotomy on that side. It's like, well, I feel guilty if I leave my son to go somewhere else, like to go,
Mm,
to go work. It's like you're going to be judged for that, or you're going to be judged, if you stay at home, or like either way, there's going to be people that judge you, and so that's why the intention thing is so important, man. And on the second part of that, when you're having these communications, whether it's you talking to Liz, me talking to Lori, or us talking to our kids, like, dude, you're expressing that disappointment that you feel. It's like, man, I don't want to miss anything. And my kids know that, right? It's like, I want to be there. I don't want to miss a single goal that's Quincy scores in soccer. I don't want to miss a single moment that, like, Kingston has playing deck hockey. I don't want to miss a single moment of anything. Like, I've missed my kids' first steps being on the road. I've missed the first time they said, mama or dada. I missed all of that. But I tell you what I didn't miss, man, is being a good example
mm,
of showing them what it takes, to be great in the world, and to share with them some of the challenges that we face. Like, sometimes I come home, dude, it probably looks like I went to war that day, because it probably felt like that day. And like Paisley, dude, she's 11 years old, almost 12. Every day I walk in the house, she says, "How was your day, daddy?" And dude, like some days I'm honest with her, like today sucked. And she's like, "Well, what happened?" And I'll like share some of what happened, like at the level that she can understand. But I think it's important to do that, man. Like, you know, this is messy. Like, business is messy, life's messy, parenthood's messy. And like the sooner that your kids realize, like, they look at you like you're Superman or Superwoman, the sooner they realize that like Superman and Superwoman have bad days too, like the more they realize their own bad days are normal. Maybe they had a crappy day at school. Maybe they had, somebody say something not nice to them. Well, dude, when they figure out that like mommy and daddy go through the same thing, and
mm.
I have people that say things about me and I don't give it much stock, right? Like, because I know who I am, you teach them how to be who they are by example, not by what you say. Because, we all know that like they're going to live out what you live, they're not going to live out what you say. And so if you're a hypocrite, be prepared for your kids not to listen much to what you say. And if you are living out, what it means to be a good example, as much as you can. None of us are perfect, man. There are moments all the time that I have instant regret of things that I say or do, or how I react or whatever. And my job as a parent and as a good example is to own that and do better. And that, for me, it's that idea of like, dude, we're all just trying to figure it out. And the more that we have that communication with our spouses, our kids, and we truly express how we feel, without putting the weight of that on your kids, but truly just expressing how you feel. Like, tell them you had a bad day, and tell them it's okay. Like, hey, tomorrow's the sun's going to come up tomorrow. Well, how are you going to handle that, Dad? Well, I'm going to go back to work tomorrow and
Mm.
keep trying to figure it out. Right? It's that's what it is, and they see you, whether you realize it or not, dealing with situations. They see who your friends are, right? They see who you choose to surround yourself with. If you have kids that surround themselves with bad examples, maybe you should look at who you surround yourself with or what you tolerate in your life, because they get it from somewhere that it's okay to have bad people around you, right? If you don't do it, then you have a leg to stand on to make sure they don't, right?
What you said too is huge. Showing them life's not perfect. And I think a lot of parents try and be perfectionists to their kids. I think a lot of parents, you can call them helicopter parents or whatever you want to call them. They they try and strive too much for perfection, but there's no possible way of knowing what's going to happen next with a kid. It's just every kid's different. And by you showing them that you telling Paisley that, hey, I had a bad day today. I'm gonna have bad days. Nothing's perfect. Instead of walking in after getting kicked in the balls all day long, and then you're like, oh yeah, today was great. It was awesome. It was the best day ever. Um, you're showing reality. You're showing life's realities. You're showing that life is going to be difficult. Life's going to be good. Life's going to be bad. It's just life can sway you anyway, but it's teaching them to be better for the future too. So what you said there is such a huge point that I think there is a lot of parents that don't do that. They shelter their kids a little bit. They don't want them to see the nasty realities of the world because the world is nasty. Let's just face it, is what and there's good and there's bad. There always is going to be in this world. That's the way God made it. Um, but that right there, you're already starting at an early age showing them that, life's gonna suck, but I rebound. This is how I do it. This is how I improve on this next thing and get to the next level. That is huge as a father.
Man, dude, you got to be careful how much expectation you put on those kids too. It's like, they've got, whether we like it or not, there's going to be an age where, they're on social media. They're going to see all this stuff. They're going to see all
Yep.
these, airbrushed photos of other people that, elevate their expectation of themselves, right? Like just the amount of expectation that these kids have for like unreasonable stuff. Like I'm supposed to have a Lamborghini by 23 years old, right? Like, it's not realistic. And so the more real we are on a day-to-day basis of like showing them like, dude, you don't have to be perfect to be happy. Paisley's doing a project for school right now, and their quest is on personal finance, and she has to give a speech on whether money will make you happy or not.
Mm.
And so, she has this amazing perspective on like, you know, it's pretty much in line with reality. And I was like so proud listening to her talk about it because I'm like, she really gets it. That like, dude, it matters whether or not you have some resources or not, but it will not make you happy. There's a lot of rich people that are extremely miserable.
Oh,
But it matters that you have a good financial standing as a family, and that you fight for that and you sacrifice for that and you're willing to do what it takes to create it and maintain it. And for her to know that at 11 years old, it was incredible to me to listen to her like have this like really deep perspective, almost an adult perspective of like why it matters, but on the other side, why it doesn't and why it won't make you happy, right? That it's not the answer to everything in life, but it is a resource that's required to be able to live, the way that you want to live. And, and I think, again, they get that from the example that we set, from the conversations we're willing to have, from the things that we don't shelter them from, right? And I don't tell them everything. Like, I'm not gonna discuss the cash flow of the business with basically, at that level, because sometimes, they're not going to understand everything that we go through. But it's important for us to share as much as we think they can handle, and keep introducing them to new things all the time. The guys just said to me this morning after the podcast, like Paisley was in here yesterday. she spent most of the day over here with the media team. And they were like, I said, someday soon, we're going to get some cheap labor out of that girl. It's time for her to stop being a freeloader, right? And they were like, dude, she might be able to like come in here and contribute sooner than you think. Like, she's dialed in, she's focused, she understands, what she wants to do on this side of the business. That's pretty cool to see in an 11 or 12-year-old. But I do think it's about what we expose them to and the conversations we're willing to have, and the things that we're willing to tell them that maybe other kids wouldn't hear.
Yeah, no, everything you said there too is just being a real world example to your kids is so important. And I mean, that just shows to you as a father and to Lori as a mother how well you guys have done. I mean, Paisley saying what she did about money, the teaching. I mean, give yourselves a pat on the back. That's an unbelievable thing right there, too, for a girl at that age to know those things. So, I commend you on that, man. Especially 5 kids, you're a hell of a father. And I'm glad I get to learn from somebody like you myself too, because I'm new to the game. But I wanted to go into something before we wrap this up too, because you've spoke about your relationship with God. You brought up God a few times on this show, and this just popped in my mind. I want you define God, define what God is. Let's go into that. I mean, obviously, we're going to be doing part 2, part 3 of this show. I know we got a time limit here, because there's so much to this question, but um, God has been a huge part of your life. I know He has. I know He's been definitely a huge part of mine. But with you as a father, you as a husband, you as a business person, you as a leader, you as a friend, um, define what God means to you.
Oh man, that's a tough question, man. It's such a deep question. I think, to put it simple for me, it's crazy to think that, at different points in our life, we're close to God, we're far away, right? Just depends on the scenario, it depends on what's happening. Many people find God in their worst moments, right? Like, when they get brought to their knees and they finally find God. For me, it's always been that, like, that north compass, that gift that's put inside of all of us, our creator that has given us purpose, that's given us life. I will say this, the conversation about kids makes me really think about like how my relationship with God has been impacted by, family, by having kids. And you just experienced this recently, so I'm interested to get your thoughts too. But like, I think I know God at a whole new level the moment that I watched Paisley be born,
Mm.
and being a father, and watching kids and the miracle of birth, and just life in general, man. It changes in an instant, and when you look at that little baby and you realize, like, God gave me this gift, and that gift can't even live without my help.
Mm.
There's a different depth to that relationship you get with God, in my opinion,
Yeah.
that I don't think you can get that layer of that relationship without it. And I think that my relationship with God has been exponentially closer, through all of that, through every child that I've had. This morning, man, I walked in Quincy's room, and he sets his alarm on Alexa every morning, and he's listening to worship music. Like, he sets his
Mm.
alarm to worship music at 6 years old. And again, man, that stuff is, I give Lori all the credit, man. Like, she prays with them, she reads them scripture, she talks about Jesus. She's such a good example of that, just, and it's not like she's, you know, forcing that on my kids. Like, she's just living it and being an example, and the kids, I remember each one of them talking about Jesus in the back seat of the car at different points, right? Different questions get asked, or, and somebody will bring up God and one of them will debate the other one about something. And, I think, man, we're all put here with a purpose, and that purpose is provided to us by our creator, by God. And, for me, I feel that purpose. Every child that I've had, I've felt a bigger and bigger and bigger purpose of, like, what I want to do in the world and why I want to do it, and then of course, like, you have the demands of everyday life of, like, every time you have a child, another one, like, the expectation of what's required of you goes up, right? Because you might have college or private school or, whatever it is. Maybe, I got two girls now. I'm sure those weddings won't be inexpensive, right? And so, it's all of that stuff, but all of that for me, it ties back to this gift from God that we've been given with life, in general. Like, we've been chosen. I don't know, I can't remember what the number is, but it's like 1 out of 1 trillion chance that you're here, right? And, like, and then I think, like, dude, I was blessed with five more of those. I was blessed with this wife that, like, has my back. And so, like, who God is to me, man, is like the best co-pilot I could have ever asked for. The person that put friendships like yours in my life. And, you know, uh, it's overwhelming to think about who he is, what he is, the
Hmm.
responsibility that I feel to glorify God in my own life because of the blessings that I have. Like, I wake up every morning, man. I put my feet on my floor, I put my head in my hands, and I go through, whatever pops into my mind that day from a gratitude perspective. And literally, bro, most mornings I'm emotional in that moment, like overwhelmed with blessings. And that does not mean, by the way, that everything in my life is just dandy that morning. Like, there's usually things that are going on. But for that minute, man, it's like I feel his presence, like more than any other moment in the day. It's like, I'm here with you, man. I got you, right? And what else do I need, right? To go out and go do it again. And to do it in a way that hopefully is a good example to my family, but more importantly than that, dude, something that God will be proud of. That I can live a day where I help people, I impact people. I'm a good example to my family. I'm a good example to the people that, I'm responsible for leading here. I'm responsible for being a good example for inside of TCS. All of that. And I feel that. And I feel like that has been called upon me, right? The old quote is, God doesn't call the qualified, he qualifies the called. I feel that qualification a lot of days, right? That I'm growing into that, right? I never feel qualified. I'm growing into it every day. And some days it's a hell of a lot more uncomfortable than others, right? And but that's it, man. A long answer to the question, and I'm not even sure I've done a good job of answering it. But you know, he's everything to me, man. I don't know what I would do if I didn't have it. And if I didn't have faith, I don't know where I would be if I couldn't, talk to my heavenly Father when the bad moments, when the storms of life roll along. I definitely wouldn't be where I am. Like, I look around here and I'm like, dude, this can't be me, because I am, like, if you walk around with me every day, you'd figure out that this probably has nothing to do with me and everything to do with him, right? Like that, providing these blessings, these opportunities, the connections, the employees, the people that show up here every day to do what we do and believe in the mission. I just can't believe that is an earthly deal, right? That it's not somehow guided by something bigger than us.
You said you didn't think you answered that question correctly. I don't think there's a wrong answer. Because that question is to make you think. It's to make you talk about the blessings that you had. obviously you've had already as well. um, and that's what you just did there uh, as well. I relate to you in a lot of ways. You and I, similar stories. I was divorced, found Liz. Liz has been a huge blessing to me. It's I joke and say it was going from the devil to an angel, basically. And it's just when you I remember looking up too at night, um, when I was in my other situation, and I would go out and I would pray and I would say, "Give me something." I don't help me have an answer. I don't know what I'm doing with this relationship, and should I get out of this? Should I? And I got the answer eventually. He's like, "Here's your girl. Here's your dream girl. Love at first sight. Girl's been everything to me," and so on. Same as Lori is to you. Now we have a son together. Um, so it's crazy the things God does, and you see it over time. You see it, and we're always in the moment. We're always, as entrepreneurs, we're not always clearly thinking what he's doing, but when you stop, and that's why I wanted to ask you that question, because you just put it out there. You just said what he's done for you too. I want to end it with this one though, because this one, as you were talking, popped in my head. In all the amazing things that you are doing, you're doing a lot of things right now, Brian. So, do you think you've lived up to God's expectation yet?
Oh no, not even close, man. I I get the blessing of being around a lot of older people, and just went to the Berkshire Hathaway shareholder meeting, right? And Jay and I were walking around there, and you know, you have those moments where you're like, "Wow, man, this is really cool." And several times Jay was like, "Wow, this is impressive." And I said to him instantly, like, "Dude, give us 60 years and see where we're at." Right?
Yeah.
And when you're around older people, you realize, like, I think the thing that I'm realizing this year, or being stretched to come to a realization of, is like, we're all high flying, like, motivated, trying to make everything happen all at once type people. And, um, the old quote that I've used most of my life that I need to follow probably a little more often myself is like, sometimes you got to slow down to speed up, and you got to realize that, like, this is a long game we're playing,
Hmm.
and in business, we've got these distractions of, private equity companies cashing people out for millions of dollars. And, you know, uh, they call me 3 times a week. And, it's like, what are we really doing here? And so when I think about, like, God's real purpose on my life, dude, I got to spend one-on-one time with John Maxwell. And the most valuable thing he told me, man, was like, from 63 to 75, he felt like he did more than he did in the first 63 years. And so what I'm doing right now is nothing compared to what God has for me. I know that. Like, my job every day is to be obedient, follow the path, keep learning, keep growing, keep treating people right, and, keep sharing his message as much as I can, and being that example that hopefully calls a lot more people closer to him. And, so to me, it's like, no, dude, I feel like I've fallen short much more than I've achieved the expectation. But I don't underestimate what we've done either, right? It's like, I'm grateful for where I am, but incredibly dissatisfied compared to what I know our potential is. And the hardest part of that is waiting to see what it actually is, right? It's a game of patience. And anybody that knows me well knows that patience is not an easy thing for me, but it's something I've learned a lot. As I've gotten older, I've been able to be more patient, stay in the moment, realize that, like, what we're dealing with today isn't going to matter in 5 years. And I think that what we're doing right now, man, all of us, is just a warm up for what 20 years from now looks like or 40 years from now looks like. And, so I'm enjoying the ride. I'm taking it all in, but I don't think we've even scratched the surface of what is possible and what will come in the future for all of us because of how we're doing it.
And the thing with you too is consistency. You don't quit, you don't give up. I mean, going back, and I have the date, I watched it too, just your first live, July 24th, 2019. Um, you talked about life isn't supposed to be easy. Talked about success is not a destination, and you're still on that road, obviously, too. Um, we just talked about how life isn't easy. We talked about these things too, which kind of circle back to that too. But we'll get into that. I watched your very first live episode, Brian Hess, 2019, and you've been consistent ever since, man. Your leader, you're you walk the walk, like I said. That's why I have so much respect for you, because there's a lot of guys that just talk. They don't do what they're doing. And I always joke with you and say I'm chasing you. That's why, I love having our relationship and everything you do, because I'm like, all right, Brian's doing this. I got to do this too. I got to put it in action, because you do what, and you show that it works too. I mean, you're living the life. You're showing that it's working. People, and that's the difference maker with you, man. And as a father, as a husband, as a leader, as a business owner, you're doing all these things, and you're doing it the right way. You're honoring God too, and you're just getting started. That was a great answer too, because I know I mean, we're all young, man. We got a long way to go. And
Yeah,
that
I'm a little
Berkshire,
older than you, but we are still young.
yeah, we're still
Dude,
young.
I'm at Berkshire, and the average age in that joint is like, it's crazy, right? Like there was a dude that I met there that was 67 that's he sold his business to Warren 6 or 7 years ago. And he said every time he talks to Warren, he reminds him of how young he is.
Yeah.
Buffett's 93, still at it, right? And that's the truth. We are just babies in this game, man. That's for sure.
And that's the thing, when you take on that attitude of, God puts these certain times in your path. If things slow down, go take on another thing. Things slow down in one area, maybe that's God's way of telling you to go in another area too. And you and I talk about that all the time, man. But like I said, we can go on for hours. We'll have you on for part two once again too. I didn't even get to really re-intro you again, as far as what you do with the Pavement Group, but everybody can go back to 2021 and hear all that stuff. So, with that being said, where can people connect with Brian Hess?
Yeah, real Brian Hess on all platforms. The companies are the Pavement Group, Top Contractor School, and One Team Media, exactly like they sound on all the platforms. Yeah, feel free to send me a DM, and I will be I will be the one getting back to you if you want to connect or ask any questions about anything at all.
And check out Top Contractor School too. And appreciate you guys all for listening. Like, share, comment, subscribe. You know the routine. And 5-star reviews only. That's all we accept here. Appreciate you guys. I'll see you guys on the next episode.